feel like today is a little bit more of a check-in in some way, shape, or form. We're beginning a new series. So leading up to Easter this week, you may be familiar, but Ash Wednesday is this Wednesday, and it starts off the season of Lent. Lent is a church tradition that prepares us for Easter. At the beginning, what it was actually 40 days of prayer and fasting for people who were becoming a part of the church to be baptized. That's how it started. So it was actually reserved for people who were coming to know Jesus, and then the church would celebrate baptisms on Easter Sunday. And then the church, many centuries ago, started to realize that this is actually beneficial for like other people also. Other people who may not be getting baptized, but there's still something here that people who might be far away from the church, far away from Jesus, can still foster something as we lead up to Easter. And then they even realized this isn't just for people who are coming to know Jesus or are outside the church or not in life with Jesus, but it's actually good for us too. Like, we should participate in this. And so the 40 days leading up are an opportunity for us to repent, in a sense. It's a big word to say, to turn around. And when we turn around, we actually turn towards God. And so it's 40 days in which we actually release things in our lives to turn towards Jesus, to have him be the center of whatever it is. Now, you can go a lot of different ways. You can give up chocolate. You can give up complaining. You can give up alcohol. You can give up, you just keep going down the list. Whatever it is, though, and sometimes we can I'm going to get some health benefits out of this one too. That's not a bad thing. No shame on that. But really what we're trying to identify are where are the areas that I'm placing a lot of dependence. What are the things that I'm leaning on in my own life rather than God? What are the things that are taking up a lot of my mental capacity, that's giving me a lot of stress, anxiety, worry, or that's bringing me a lot of comfort and even control? And how do we release those things? And in releasing them, our belief is that we'll actually receive something. Now, we can't predetermine what that is. And we don't say, I'll give you all my chocolate for the next month, and then you're going to give me this because this is the thing I'm praying for mostly. I think you do pray for things when you fast, but it's not this agreed upon thing ahead of time. We're saying, God, I realize that there's things in my life that I'm depending on other than you. And for 40 days, I want to intentionally give those things up so that I can find more of you, that I can learn to depend on you more, that I can notice you more in my life and in the life of others, that you actually have a little bit more space, God, to shape me into a good, beautiful, graceful, patient, loving, generous person. It's a slow process. There's no magic in it. But I think God really does enjoy the times when we create more space. And I believe that he's going to deliver something to you. You will receive something. I don't know what that is, but we're excited for that. So that's what we're going to do over the next 7 weeks. And each week we'll have a different topic. And the idea is that we're going to offer something for you to consider to actually release. And in that, we want to give a practice to maybe create space to receive something. So today, I want you to think about releasing speaking your mind. Sounds fun, huh? That's all I have. That's all I got today. You guys just don't speak your mind for 40 days and everything's going to be okay. No, you need everyone stop speaking your mind. That's the thing. So here's the deal. In our culture right now is everyone has a platform, and that's a very good thing because not everyone has had a platform before. The hard part about that is that everybody has a platform. It goes both ways. And I don't know about you, but it is very easy to foster a life in which I just get to speak my mind freely because I tend to have certain people or certain groups or certain relationships that will affirm me. And what we know through technology and social media is that we kind of end up in these little echo chambers, and there's enough people around us. This is the challenging thing with only hanging out with the friends that we like. Is they'll affirm us over and over and over again. And then when I get put into a different situation with a bunch of different people that don't see the same thing, usually what it ends up being is I either run away and get pushed back, or I press in and I speak my mind. And speaking my mind oftentimes what happens, even right now as you're listening to me talk, you do this in conversation all the time. Science shows that in our brain, while someone else is talking, we're after like a second, we're no longer actually listening to what they have to say. We're actually already starting to think about what we're going to respond with, right? You do that where like they're talking and you're just like, can you just hurry up so I can say the thing that I need to say? Like it's my turn. I have enough of what you're telling me to give you the response that you need to hear. And we can go through our life speaking our mind. Now, the other way I think this works out, and maybe what we'll go down a little bit more today, is that I am the one speaking my mind into how my life should be. I'm the one determining what my life should look like. I'm the one saying, here's how things should be, so that when they don't go, that's not how they should be. I'm the one that is predetermining, establishing what my life is going to look like. And in a way, my entire life, my relationships, my work, the things I do with my time and my money, it's me speaking my mind over and over and over again. And I don't know about you, but like the times where like you've said something to someone and then like an hour later, or a day later, you're like, why did I say that? Or the thing that you do, and then you actually get to think about it afterwards, and it's like, why did I do that? That just was not a good decision. Had you actually paused, had you actually thought through it, had you actually maybe spent some time in silence, you probably would have responded a little bit differently. You probably would have said it differently. You probably would have done it differently. But the challenge is that we're very quick in our culture and in our life to speak our mind, to just make an action, to make a decision, to do the choice, whatever it is. Now, what's interesting is as we think through that and the things that we're doing in our life is when we speak our mind, it actually matters. The things that we do with our time, they actually matter. The things that we're doing with our money, they actually matter. Paul writes to a church in Thessalonica. This is that's weird. I don't know. I can read it well enough. Yeah, good. So it'll get better. He writes this. Now about your love for one another, we do not need to write to you, for you yourselves have been taught by God to love each other. And in fact, you do love all of God's family throughout Macedonia. Yet we urge you, brothers and sisters, to do so more and more. So Paul here is writing to a very young group of believers, people who have come to faith in Jesus, a new established church. And what's interesting is he's affirming them. He's saying, man, you guys are doing so great at loving other people. You're doing an amazing job. And like, I don't know, but then he also says keep going. Like, don't give up. You're doing so well, but keep doing it more and more and more. So all about love and loving other people. And then he goes on to say in verse 11, it didn't get better, it got worse. There we go. Here we go. And to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. To make it your ambition to lead a quiet, Stephen, you're great, to lead a quiet life. You should mind your own business and work hard with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. Is your life quiet? All of you introverts are like, yeah, my life's quiet and it's the best. Like, all right, this is wonderful. But even you introverts, I'm sure that your life still doesn't feel quiet. Things feel busy, things feel rushed, things feel chaotic. And then our extroverts, maybe even more so, it's just more self-imposed, like you choose to do these things to yourself. And then you feel like, man, this week was nuts. It was so busy. Why did I do that? And we just kind of perpetuate these cycles. Not even just thinking about your time, but thinking about the decisions you're making. Thinking about the relationships that you have. Do you have space? Do you have margin? Do you have areas where you're slowed down? Or are you just rushing from one thing to the next, speaking your mind with everything just going unchecked? Because the challenge is when we get in rhythms of speaking our own mind, we actually never allow God to speak. And then what we tend to do more and more is just live our life going on and on and on and asking God to do this or to do that or to bless this or to bless that. And if we don't actually slow down to lead a quiet life, what's interesting about this is he connects love to work. That's odd, like in a sense of like, hey, you're doing so great loving people, but keep going. And hey, lead this quiet life for like you work hard with your hands. And there's a lot here that we don't have adequate time for. But if you notice this, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. And when we think about work, when we think about the things that we do, are you doing it any differently than the people you work with that aren't in a relationship with Jesus? And I think there's a positive spin here because I believe many of you do. Like I genuinely do. I think a lot of you could look at maybe the coworker that you're with, maybe the boss or the employee, and there's some things that are different in the way that you operate. And hopefully you can grab on a couple of those, and those are encouraging. The way that you talk to people that you disagree with, the way that you have patience, the way that you honor ethics. You go through those things, but then also at the same time, what are the ways in which your life is just the same? Where it's not actually interesting to other people to ask you, like, what's different about you? Because for Paul, these are a group of people who have been basically cut off from their families, people who can no longer work for the Roman government. And what's happening in this newly formed community, we oftentimes hear about the early church meeting all of each other's needs and having everything shared and in common. But what was happening is because of that commonality, you had a number of people who were just putting their feet up and kind of playing the card, well, like, you guys got to take care of me because we're a church now. And he's writing to a lot of them saying, that is not the way we love each other. We don't just depend on other people, though there are times that we depend on other people. We actually contribute. And one of the ways in which you do that is you work. And then he even says to work with your hands, which in that time, you don't want to work with your hands because that would be what the poor do. You want to be a thinker. You want to be a philosopher. You want to teach. You want to do these kind of things. And so even in that, he's saying, you guys are different. You are set apart. And he keeps going. They're just staying here. Just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. That idea of winning from outsiders, again, I think is the posture within the things that you do. It's not maybe being the best at your job. It's not being the best at your life. It's not having all the techniques figured out. It's not being the most successful. But it's the posture and the way in which you go about it. And I think there's this thing here, is like the thing under the thing with this. When I think about our life, just speaking our mind, life as we see it, life as we want it, life as we think others want for us, if we just keep going with that, we remain in control. We remain in control of everything about our lives. And I don't know about you, but oftentimes when I'm in control, it doesn't go very good. Sometimes it does. But usually I can look back and be like, man, I missed a lot. Man, I fell short. And now I'm going to tie it here to something in a minute. Maybe this will feel like a stretch, but you'll see. Is the noise that we have in our lives. The amount of things that we consume throughout the day. Like, how much do you spend your life in silence? What do you usually do when something is quiet and you're bored? You scroll social media, you turn on Netflix, you put a song on Spotify. Like, you go hang out with friends. Like, there's this thing inside of our lives. You introverted people, again, are like, nope, I don't do any of that stuff. I'll get to you in a second. But there's something about it, like we just need to feel it. And we actually really struggle to have a quiet life where we kind of keep our head down. And we want to speak our mind, we want to correct others, we think like, man, if those people could just change, if they could be different. But a part of what Paul is saying here is like, keep your head down. Do the things that we're telling you and encouraging you in. You know Jesus. You see how he walked. You know the teachings. You see the things that he's invited you to. Keep your head down and do those. Because when you do, your life is less about trying to convince people and change them, but about them noticing how much different your life is. And then they'll be curious. They'll be interested. And the other piece is, again, going back to, if we don't actually slow down, stop speaking our mind in all of our life and in all of our conversations, and allow God to speak, I bet, over time, you'll make better decisions, your relationships will be healthier, you'll feel more at peace in your life, you'll be more generous, you'll find more love. I mean, we can just keep going and going and going. We see this in the life of Jesus. Often before or after he gave his life away to other people, he would go and retreat. He would find times of silence. He would go connect with his Father because he knew that he was not in control of his life. To do the things he was being called to, he had to be dependent on something other than himself. Even for Jesus, not to just go around speaking his mind. He even said that the things I do, I see my Father doing. It's actually not me just predetermining what all this looks like. It's me connecting to my Father. And my Father guiding me and pushing me forward. Last thing, and we're going to try on a practice, is, I'll say this one first. So I like this. This is helpful. Because a part of this is like, well, if we can't just speak our mind, if we just need to keep our head down, what about like justice? What about like the things that are not right in the world? Like I need to be like an ally. I need to share. I need to speak. I need to stand up for things like this. Richard Foster has this quote here that I think is helpful. A person who is under the discipline of silence is a person who can say what needs to be said when it needs to be said. If we are silent when we should speak, we are not living in the discipline of silence. If we speak when we should be silent, we again miss the mark. See, I think what happens is if we can actually live a life of silence, we're actually better at speaking when we need to speak. And if we live a life of silence, we're better at not speaking when we don't need to speak. That's both verbally, that's also with our actions, that's with our entire life. That if we can be people that practice silence regularly, our lives will be different. People will notice, man, in those moments when we speak, I think they'll be more powerful. I bet all the times I just like waste words because it's just me speaking my mind. And I'm like, they need to hear this. I should say this, whatever it is. And in the moments when I'm silent, I think those will be powerful also. Because we don't need to fill everything with words and with actions. And lastly, I think for all of us before this practice, I think living from the center keeps you from the center, and you're better for it. Living from the center keeps you from the center. Living from the center of who God is, who He has, what He has for you. God trying to connect you. Living from the center of what God has for your life will keep you from making yourself in the center. Where everything revolves around you, where everything is your desires, where everything is what you want, where everything is what you think is best for other people. If you can slow down, if you can do the hard work of following the teachings of Jesus, of keeping your head down, of trusting Him, if you can keep Him at the center, trusting that He's working even when you're silent, you will be removed from the center of your own life more and more. And I believe you will be better for it, and going a bit further, people around you will be better for it. People will actually appreciate it because you're slow, you're quiet, you're gentle, you have margin, you have space. So what I want to do is I actually want us to try on some silence right now. For some of you, this might feel like an eternity. It's only going to be about 6 minutes, okay? So when you start freaking out in your mind 2 minutes in, just know it's going to 6 minutes tops, okay? What we're trying to do here is a practice of Jesus that has been practiced throughout the church for centuries, of people slowing their lives down, stop speaking their minds, stop doing the actions that they think is best, and just being. That's it. I think that's why this is also one of the hardest practices, is because all you're doing is nothing. The times in my life where I have higher rhythms of this and less rhythms of this, sometimes I wonder what it's all worth because I walk away after 20 minutes being like, well, that was useless. I just sat there and had like thoughts coming through my mind the whole time trying to like fight them off. But what I've noticed is over time, as it's built in, I start to create this groove where I'm quicker to get silent. It's easier for me to remove the clutter because it's this rhythm, it's a practice. And the days that I start with silence, I can actually be someone who is not speaking my mind as much. It's pretty incredible, it really is. But it's also hard to do. So what I'm going to invite us in is to try this on as an encouragement for you to try this in your own life. And then we'll have a few practices for you to take on for this week. But I wonder this Lent season, what God will do in your life through silence, if you'll try. If you'll give God all you're doing, if you'll give him all your thoughts, if you'll give him all your speaking, if you give him all the things that you've predetermined already, and just gave him space, I think good things will happen. I really do. So if you're comfortable and would like to try this on, I'd encourage you to wiggle in your chair to a comfortable spot, realizing that your feet are connected to the ground. Your hands, your heart, your mind in an open posture to receive. Maybe a few deep breaths. And now before we enter in, I want you just to have one little phrase that you're going to hold on to through this 6 minutes. Usually just a few words. It might be a short little passage, or it's just something that grounds you. For a long time, mine has been Father of Love. Yours might be Grace Abounds. Maybe it's Jesus, have mercy. Maybe it's Good and Gracious God. So whatever it is, just allow a short phrase that you'll use to ground yourself. And what you'll do with that, as your mind starts to race, as you think about the kid crying downstairs, as whatever's going on, all you do is you don't need to push it out, but you just bring yourself back by just saying, Father of Love. And then you just sit and you wait. And last thing before we enter in, I just want you to allow God to bring to mind the thing that you're trying to make a decision on right now. Or maybe it's a thing that you're trying to solve or fix. Maybe it's a person that you're having a hard time with or need to change. Maybe it's the direction of your future. Whatever's kind of standing out to you right now, just let that come to mind. And again, you don't need to fix it. You don't need to solve it. But what would it look like just to give to God in this time? And so I'm going to invite us in by just reading a short psalm. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Good. About you, but I think there's something holy in the silence where you just get to simply be. And back to our introverted, extroverted, just doing nothing isn't silence. Just being away isn't silence, but it's active. It's a practice. Like, that's hard work. 5-6 minutes of silence is a challenge. It's a wrestle. To just keep continually just letting the things coming into the mind just push out. Just to be. And I think every once in a while God breaks in and speaks something clearly. It doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen most of the time. But even just this right now, imagine just like entering into your next work meeting. So right now, just imagine entering back into parenting. Imagine entering into the Christmas dinner table with family. Like taking this and just letting God just have his way with your life. Because these 5 minutes, I think, turn into 5 hours. These 5 minutes turn into the day. I don't know if it lasts too much longer than that, so we got to keep coming back to it. But I would love for just a couple people, positive or negative, maybe just in a couple words, share out loud how that handful of minutes was for you. Did you guys fall asleep?
Sure. I'm an extrovert. I don't do this as a discipline on purpose, like out of my own like volition. But there's a way where I'm realizing like it is so helpful for me to better understand myself, because a lot of times I do kind of keep myself busy, and so just even now I definitely had a train of thought that was going, but then I just was like coming back to my little breath prayer, and I realized my train of thought was like trying to take me somewhere, but when I asked like what was that about, I was like, oh, I'm afraid. And I don't, it just had to do something with my parents, and I don't think I would have recognized that feeling was there necessarily, but there was something about just the stillness of like that part of me had a voice.
Yeah. Yeah, so something a bit deeper was actually allowed to come up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's good. Thank you, Lila. Maybe one more?
Yeah, I can speak up. I definitely fell asleep 3 times.
Good.
But that was a good check-in, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't usually slow down. I usually
Yeah.
let myself slow down. I don't feel like I can slow down
Yeah.
most of the time.
Yeah.
And so just taking that, my phrase was, my peace matters. And yeah, so just allow myself to slow down, figuring out I should be getting a lot more sleep than I do.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Recognizing how tired you are. Caleb, your hand was half up.
Yeah, as I reflected on just doing that, it felt like the word for me is intimacy. Like it felt even more intimate time with God than praying.
Yeah.
Being silent and not just talking to God, but
Yeah.
also listening.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. And then some of you are sitting there like, I don't even know what just happened. I don't like that. That's okay too. But what you just named right there, I think that what if prayer is less about the words that we have and more about just being with God? And I think when we do need words for prayer, we actually are coming from a deeper place because we've simply just spent time with God more. And it's very interesting. It's counterintuitive. A lot of ancient writers, Nate, I'll come to you for the last one. A lot of ancient writers actually who started to do this discipline, even people who did not believe in God, were not in a relationship with God, actually found themselves levitating in a chair at one point. And this was like a breaking, like they would do this practice over and over, and then eventually they would literally be floating in their chair and would come to faith. I'll leave that for you to determine but these are like very popular ancient writers who came to faith through silent prayer by like powerful things. Nate, last one.
Yeah, so I don't know about anybody else, but for me, my self-talk in my head is always negative. I'm not doing this right, whatever. My grounding message was, for me, was, I love you, right? And it was from God to me, but also speaking that to myself.
Yeah.
And I dozed off, right?
Yeah.
And my head was like, you're not doing this right.
Yeah.
You're sleeping, and it's like, no, I love myself. It's like, bring myself back to my message of,
Yeah.
I love you,
Yeah.
you're okay.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. God's a place of rest. God is a place of refuge. The Jesuits have a practice, St. Ignatius, through the spiritual exercises and these preparatory practices for 21 days of just receiving God's love. One of them is literally every handful of days to grab a blanket, to wrap yourself with it, and to lay there, and to simply just be loved by God. It's very interesting. So I think this is formative. Silence is formative. Silence is hard. Silence is boring. You go through all of it, but I do believe it changes who you are, because you become a person who more can sense God more often. And I think just through this pattern, you just start to become a little bit more rested and a little bit more at peace, but it takes time. It takes a lot of time. It takes swimming upstream, because everything else in your life, you're just speaking your mind. You're just moving from one thing to the next, or you're avoiding one thing to the next, rather than entering in with peace and just noticing where God is at work. Why don't we stand? We're going to have, I'm going to pass them out, but we'll have cards actually on the communion tables, if we can put them there. And then also on the stairwell on the way out. Each week we'll walk out of here with a card with a few recommended practices. This one is just from this week. One idea is just to notice the noise in your life and do less of it. Rather than having the radio on, turn it off on your drive. Rather than turning to the Netflix show at 8:30, why don't you just try sitting in silence for a little bit? Another one is in conversation. What if you practice silence after someone spoke? Now, you don't just stare at them awkwardly, silent, but what you maybe do is just ask them a question before you respond. Oh, that's interesting. Why do you think that? Oh, that's neat. I want to hear more. Like practicing being a person who's just pushing against the rhythm to keep speaking, to keep doing. Invite the worship team up also. And then the last one, I'm calling this the reach practice. This one is, if you really want to stretch, do 20 minutes of silence a day. Any spiritual author or writer would say that if you're not doing 20 minutes of silence a day, you're not living. Part of me doesn't like when they say that, because I'm like, I don't like you. You just sit around all day in silence? Like, we got lives to live. But I think they're also true, and I think they're right. There's something to come from silence consistently each day. So those are invitations for you to try on. Again, there's a couple at the communion tables, and then they'll be on the stairwells on the way out. Take that with you. Put it in a place where you'll kind of remember this week. What does it look like to be a person that's practicing silence? To release the need to be speaking your mind through your words and through your actions all the time. And then we'll have another one for the next week. So why don't we sing this song? Take communion as you'd like. I think communion is another space of silence. We oftentimes don't have the right words to go and receive the body of Jesus, the blood of Jesus, who he said, come and take to remember me. And you, by simply silently going and taking communion, is an act of remembrance. It's an act of silence to say, God, I'm coming before you. I'm receiving what you have for me, even if I don't have words or thought or action. So why don't we take communion? We'll sing, and then I'll come up and close us out and invite us into prayer.